All right, so you want to get better at negotiating, right? I mean, who doesn't? We're diving deep into Never Split the Difference
Oh, yeah.
by former FBI hostage negotiator
I love that book.
Chris Voss.
Such a good one.
It's amazing. He takes us like from these hostage situations to like everyday stuff,
Yeah.
salary talks, even haggling with your cable company.
Hmm.
Honestly, some of his tactics, they're pretty mind-blowing.
It really is fascinating how he kind of bridges that gap between, the traditional way people think about negotiating
Boy.
and then like his experience as FBI negotiator, right? Like
Yeah.
the nitty-gritty,
Yeah.
messy human side of things.
Yeah, exactly. He started with the classic approach, from Harvard Law School.
Right.
But he quickly realized that real-world negotiations, especially like the ones he was doing,
Yeah.
like life or death,
High stakes.
they demand something more,
Yeah.
So he developed like a whole new system.
Yeah.
And it's rooted in psychology and empathy.
And I think one of the things that's so striking is how he really flips the script on some of our really basic assumptions about negotiation.
Totally.
Like the power of no, for example.
Okay, this is where I got hooked, okay? Because we're always told to aim for yes.
Right? Yes, get to yes.
But Voss is like, no. No is where the magic happens. It's so counterintuitive.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
But when you think about it, when somebody says no, it kind of triggers this thing that Voss calls the fairness reflex.
Oh, interesting.
And they want to justify their position.
Okay.
And that can actually open up the conversation in a way
Yeah.
that a yes just doesn't. Right.
Yeah, it's almost like, instead of just being agreeable, it's like, wait, hold on, why?
Yeah.
And then they have to kind of explain themselves.
And that's when you start to really learn something, right? You start to learn what they actually want, what their motivations are.
Their motivations, yeah. What's behind the no?
Yeah.
Okay. There's not just about being contrary or anything. It's about prompting the other person to engage more deeply. And,
Totally.
Yeah, reveal what's really going on.
And he even shares how he was told no.
Really?
Initially, when he wanted to be an FBI hostage negotiator.
Oh, wow.
And so that rejection actually led him to volunteer at a suicide hotline.
Oh, wow.
Which is so interesting, right? Because that experience really shaped his entire approach to negotiation.
That's amazing. It's almost like that detour that you have to take.
Totally.
That ends up leading you to something.
That you never would have found otherwise, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes that no, it can be a catalyst for something really unexpected but ultimately beneficial.
It shifts the power dynamic in your favor in a weird way.
Totally.
It allows you to gather more information, understand the other person's perspective, and then ultimately you can kind of steer that conversation towards something better.
So how do we use this like in everyday life?
Yeah.
Like as non-FBI negotiators, like should I be aiming for no when my internet company's like, hey, we're raising your rates?
Yeah. It's not necessarily about aiming for no outright, but embracing that possibility, right?
Okay.
When you're open to that, you kind of go into the conversation with less pressure.
Okay.
More curiosity.
Yeah.
And then that can often lead to more creative solutions.
Okay, so no is not the enemy. It's more like, what, an unexpected ally?
I love that, yeah.
Yeah.
An unexpected ally.
Yeah.
That can help you kind of unlock those deeper insights and gain more control.
This is making me rethink how I go into those like tricky conversations.
Yeah.
But okay, let's keep going. You mentioned like his system's built on psychology and empathy. Is that where tactical empathy comes in?
Exactly. So tactical empathy is basically about strategically using empathy to gain a deeper understanding of the other person's motivations, even if you don't agree with them.
Oh, interesting.
Right. It's a way to build trust and gather information.
So it's not just about being nice.
It's more than just being agreeable, yeah.
It's about really like actively trying to see the world from their perspective.
And it's fascinating. There's actually some neuroscience behind this.
Oh, really?
So when we genuinely listen to someone, our brainwaves can actually start to synchronize with theirs.
Oh.
It's called neural resonance.
That sounds so sci-fi. Neural resonance?
Yeah, it does sound very futuristic.
Yeah.
But it's a real phenomenon.
Right.
That's why sometimes you feel this like instant click with someone.
Right, right.
And that can be super powerful in a negotiation. Right.
I bet. Okay. So how do we tap into neural resonance, though? Do we need like a special device?
Thankfully, no. But Voss gives us some really practical techniques to cultivate that tactical empathy and build that connection.
Yeah.
One of the simplest yet most effective is mirroring.
Wearing. Like looking in a mirror.
Not quite that literal, but it involves reflecting back
Oh.
what the other person is saying. Essentially, you repeat the last 1 to 3 words of their statement.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
That's it. Just repeat what they said. That's so easy.
I know, right? It seems almost deceptively simple.
Yeah.
But it subconsciously signals to the other person that you're really listening and you understand them.
Oh, interesting.
It makes them feel heard and validated,
Yeah.
which encourages them to open up even more.
So it's like planting a seed of trust.
Exactly.
Your rapport.
As that trust grows, they're more likely to be receptive to your ideas,
Interesting. Okay.
to your proposal.
So this mirroring thing, does this really work in like high pressure situations?
It does. Voss actually used mirroring during the Harlem Bank standoff.
Oh, wow.
Which was a very intense hostage situation.
Yeah.
By simply mirroring the hostage taker's words, he was able to de-escalate things.
Wow.
And establish rapport.
Even in those circumstances.
Even in those incredibly stressful circumstances, yeah.
That's amazing.
It is, isn't it? It's amazing to think that something as simple as repeating a few words can have such a profound effect on human interaction.
I love it. I love it. All right, so mirroring. I'm adding that to my mental toolbox for sure. But I'm guessing there's more to tactical empathy than just repeating words, right?
Absolutely. He goes deeper with another technique called labeling.
Labeling.
Yeah, labeling.
Okay.
And this involves explicitly acknowledging the other person's emotions by giving them a name.
So instead of just listening, we should just call out their feelings directly.
It can feel a little risky.
Yeah, it does seem a little daunting.
It does.
It's like, am I supposed to be a mind reader now?
Not quite.
Okay.
It's more about being observant.
Yeah.
Recognizing those emotional currents in the conversation.
Right, right.
And Voss argues that people often become defensive when they feel like their emotions are being ignored or dismissed.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right. So labeling helps diffuse that negativity by acknowledging their feelings directly.
So it's like saying, hey, I see you're feeling this way, and it's okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
But it's important to do this in a neutral, non-judgmental way.
Right.
You're not necessarily agreeing or disagreeing with their emotions. You're simply acknowledging their presence.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Can you give me an example of how this might sound?
Sure. So let's say you're in a negotiation and the other person seems frustrated. You might say something like, I sense some frustration here. Is it because you're concerned about the deadlines?
Okay.
Or if someone seems a little hesitant about a proposal, you might say, it seems like you have some reservations about this approach. What are your main concerns?
Okay, so it's not just about saying you seem angry.
Right.
It's like, it seems like you're feeling frustrated about this specific aspect.
Exactly. You're being specific and focused, which shows them that you're paying attention.
Okay.
And that you're trying to understand.
This could be really disarming.
It can be. Yeah.
Because you're not putting them on the spot.
Right.
It takes the focus away from any potential conflict.
Exactly.
And it makes it more collaborative.
Yeah.
More like, okay, let's figure this out.
That's the key. Labeling helps create this environment where both parties feel heard and understood.
Right, right.
Which then lays the foundation for a more productive negotiation.
I love it. I'm sure Voss has some stories about labeling in action.
He does. One of his students used labeling to completely turn around a situation with a client who was furious and refusing to pay.
Oh, wow. What happened?
Yeah, the client was yelling, threatening to take his business elsewhere.
Oh, no.
But instead of getting defensive or trying to argue back, she just acknowledged his anger.
Okay.
She said something like, it seems like you're really upset about how this project was handled.
And that was it?
And it was like a switch flipped.
Really?
The client was so taken aback by her calm acknowledgement of his emotions that he shifted from attack mode to actually explaining his concerns.
Wow. It's amazing how a simple phrase can completely change a conversation.
It can, the trajectory.
I'm starting to think this Voss guy was like a negotiation wizard.
He's got a knack for it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
He understands human behavior. And the beauty of it is these techniques aren't just for like hostage negotiators or high-powered executives. It's stuff that anyone can learn and use to improve their communication skills.
All right, so we've covered the power of no, tactical empathy, mirroring, labeling. I feel like we're building this approach to negotiation that's not just about the words, but also the emotions behind them.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
That layered approach leads us to another fascinating aspect of Voss's method.
Yeah.
Calibrated questions.
Calibrated questions.
Yeah.
What are those?
So instead of making demands or arguing your point, Voss suggests using open-ended questions to subtly guide the conversation.
Interesting.
And get the other person thinking about your problem.
As their own.
Yeah, as their own problem.
So it's like leading them to a solution without being like pushy.
Without being confrontational, yeah.
Yeah.
And these calibrated questions often start with how or what, which imply that the other person has the expertise or the ability to help.
Right. It's like, I trust you to help me figure this out.
Exactly.
Rather than you need to do this my way.
Exactly. And that subtle shift in framing can make all the difference.
Okay.
One of his favorite calibrated questions.
Yeah.
And one that's surprisingly versatile is, how am I supposed to do that?
Oh, that's a good question. I've used that one before.
Haven't we all?
Yeah. Usually, though, when I'm frustrated.
Right.
But Voss sees it as a strategic tactic.
He does. He calls it the magic question.
Wow.
Because it forces the other person to step into your shoes.
Yeah. Okay.
And consider the practical implications of what they're asking.
So instead of getting into a back and forth, I can use that question to kind of like redirect?
Redirect, yeah. And make it their problem.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
This is brilliant.
So it's a way to kind of gently push back without being overly confrontational.
Right.
And it can lead to more creative and mutually beneficial outcomes.
Okay, so this magic question. Does Voss have any examples of this working in real life?
He does. One of his students used this to save a consulting deal.
Oh, wow.
That was about to fall apart.
Really?
The client had these demands that she just couldn't meet.
Oh.
You know, within the budget and the time frame.
So she just asked, how am I supposed to do that?
Exactly. And it worked.
Really?
The question stopped the client in their tracks.
Wow.
It forced them to think through the logistics and realize that their demands were actually unreasonable.
So they backed down.
They did. They scaled back their expectations.
Wow.
And the deal was saved.
Just like that, the power dynamic shifted.
It did.
Wow. And a potential impasse turned into a problem-solving thing.
Yeah, it's like verbal judo.
It is. All right, that brings us to another part of Voss's approach, right?
Right.
Which is all about uncovering hidden information.
Yes.
The concept of black swans. Black swans, like the birds. I'm a little confused.
It's not about the birds themselves.
Right?
But what they represent, which is the unknown, the unexpected.
Okay.
So in a negotiation, a black swan is that piece of information that completely changes your understanding of the situation.
Oh, okay. So it's like that missing puzzle piece that suddenly
makes everything click into place.
Okay, so these black swans are hidden.
Often hidden, Sometimes they can even seem a little crazy at first.
Okay.
But they could have a massive impact on the outcome of the negotiation.
I bet. Does Voss have any, examples of black swans?
He does.
Some of them are actually pretty chilling.
Oh, no. What?
He talks about a hostage negotiation where the FBI missed this tiny little detail in a note from the hostage taker.
Oh.
And it was a phrase that indicated that he was willing to kill.
Oh, God.
And because they missed that,
they
weren't prepared.
Wow.
And it had potentially devastating consequences.
Oh, that's scary. That's a reminder that even the smallest details can be really significant.
Absolutely.
So how do we find these black swans, though? They sound so hard to predict.
Voss argues that it starts with challenging our assumptions.
Okay.
So we need to look for inconsistencies.
Okay.
In what people are saying, what they're doing. We need to ask ourselves constantly, what don't I know?
What don't I know?
What information am I missing?
Like a detective.
Exactly. Yeah. And often that valuable information is hiding in plain sight.
Yeah.
It's those things that we might dismiss as irrelevant that can actually be the key.
Oh, wow. Okay, this is blowing my mind.
I know, right?
I'm looking at these conversations in a totally different way now.
Yeah, that's the power of Voss's approach.
Yeah.
It's not just about learning specific tactics.
Right.
It's about cultivating this mindset of curiosity, empathy, and strategic thinking.
All right, so we went from the power of no to tactical empathy, calibrated questions, black swans. We really went deep into the psychology here.
We did, and that leads us to the final and equally crucial aspect of his framework, which is understanding the influence of those beyond the table.
Those beyond the table, what do you mean?
It means recognizing that in many negotiations, especially business, the person sitting across from you might not be the sole decision maker.
Okay, so there could be like a team or a boss or other people behind the scenes who can make or break the deal.
Right.
Wow, this is getting really complex.
It is a little bit like a chess game.
It is.
Where you have to be thinking several moves ahead.
Right, and considering everybody's motivations.
Wow.
Voss gives us some invaluable insight into how to navigate that.
Okay, so instead of just focusing on the person in front of me, I need to think about, like, the bigger picture.
The ecosystem of the negotiation,
Okay. So what questions can I use to figure that out?
You might ask things like, how does this proposal align with your team's goals?
Oh.
Or what are your colleagues' main concerns about this project?
Okay.
Or even just, who else needs to be on board for this to move forward?
Right. You're subtly acknowledging the presence of all these other people and making them think about their perspective.
Exactly. And by doing that, you can actually gain valuable insights
into the
dynamics and adjust your strategy.
Okay. Does Voss have any examples of how this works?
He does. He talks about a negotiation where the FBI was providing training to this large corporation, and they thought they were dealing directly with the decision makers.
Okay. But there was this key individual lurking in the shadows who had a different vision for the program.
Oh, no.
And because they hadn't taken the time to understand his concerns, he was able to effectively block the plan.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's tough.
It is.
That's why it's so important to understand the whole picture.
Voss believes that if they had simply asked those questions that we discussed earlier, they could have avoided that.
So it's not just about black swans related to the person you're talking to, but the whole ecosystem.
The whole ecosystem. It's about having that 360-degree view and understanding all the players and all of their motivations.
You got to become a master strategist.
You do.
Yeah.
And then you can develop a strategy that actually works.
I love it. I love it. This is like next level negotiation, I'm telling you.
It is. It's really fascinating stuff.
Okay, so we've talked about these hidden influencers, right? Like these people beyond the table, the puppet masters behind the scenes.
Yeah, exactly. Pulling the strings. How do we actually figure out who they are? Because they're not visible. Right.
And that's the tricky part. Voss talks about this idea of using calibrated questions, right? We talked about those before. But in this context, it's about using those questions to sort of indirectly probe for information about those unseen stakeholders.
Okay. So it's like detective work.
It is. It's like you're gathering intel.
Right.
Without directly confronting the person you're talking to.
Okay. So what kind of questions would you ask?
Well, you could try something like, how does this proposal, align with your team's goals? Or what are your colleagues' main concerns about this? Or even something simple like, who else, needs to be on board for this to move forward?
Okay.
So you're not accusing anyone of anything.
Right.
But you're just kind of like, hey, I'm aware that there are other people involved.
Right.
And I want to understand their perspective.
It's like acknowledging the elephant in the room without actually pointing at it.
Exactly.
Okay, I like it.
You're kind of gently nudging them to give you that information.
So by doing that, I can get a better sense of the bigger picture.
Right, and adjust your strategy accordingly, right?
Does Voss, give any examples of this working in real life?
He does.
Oh.
He talks about this negotiation where the FBI was providing training to a large corporation, and they thought they were dealing directly with the decision makers.
Oh, okay.
But they had really focused on just the people in the room and neglected to consider the perspective of this one key individual who wasn't present in the initial meetings.
Okay, so this person, wasn't physically at the table?
No.
But they still had a lot of influence.
Oh, tons.
Oh, wow.
And because they hadn't really taken the time to understand his concerns, this person was actually able to block the whole plan.
Yeah.
That's a tough lesson.
It is.
It's like you think you have everything figured out.
You think you've got it all under control?
Yeah.
And then,
surprise,
somebody else comes in and just throws a wrench in the whole thing.
So what could they have done differently?
Well, Voss believes that if they had just asked those calibrated questions early on, they could have brought those concerns to light.
Okay.
And maybe even addressed them.
Before it was too late.
Before it was too late, exactly.
Wow. It really is about understanding the whole playing field.
The whole chessboard, yeah.
And all the pieces involved.
It's not just about the person across the table.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the entire system.
I like that, the system.
Yeah, the web of influence.
The web, yeah, okay.
It's about having that 360-degree view.
So we're talking about, like, information gathering, strategic thinking.
Yes.
Empathy. This is a lot to juggle.
It is, and this is where practice comes in.
Right.
Right? Like any skill, the more you do it, the more comfortable you become, the more intuitive it gets.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the power of no, tactical empathy, calibrated questions, black swans, and now this idea of, like, the hidden influencers.
Right.
It feels like we've, like, really cracked the code of negotiation.
I think we're getting there.
Yeah.
But you know what? There's always more to learn.
Oh, I bet.
This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
Voss has so many more insights and stories to share.
Yeah. I'm ready for more. Bring it on.
All right, well, let's keep diving in then.
It feels like we've been on this, like, incredible journey.
It is.
Peeling back all these layers of negotiation.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to see everyday conversations in a whole new way.
I think that's one of the things that Voss does so well, right?
Yeah.
He makes it applicable to everything, not just like boardrooms and contracts.
Right, right. It's like...
It's literally any time you're trying to reach an agreement with another human.
Yeah.
Right.
I think what really stood out to me was, like, how much he emphasizes the human element, you know?
It's not about manipulating people.
It's not about being like this, you know...
It's about connecting.
Yeah.
On a human level.
Yeah. And he uses all these real-life examples, like so many from his hostage negotiations.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so compelling, right?
Totally.
It's not just theory.
Yeah.
He's like, here's how it actually played out
right.
in these crazy situations.
Yeah, I found myself just, like, hanging on to every word.
They're good stories.
Yeah, they are.
And they're proof that the stuff actually works.
Yeah.
It's not just abstract theory.
It's real.
It gets results.
This deep dive, it's honestly been like a game changer.
I'm glad.
I feel like I have all these tools now,
Yeah.
you know, for tricky conversations that I used to, like, dread.
Yeah, and that's what's so inspiring, right?
Totally.
It empowers you to be a better communicator.
Yeah.
Not just in negotiation, but, like, in life.
You know.
Yeah, I'm curious, for someone who's just starting out, like, what would you say is the most important takeaway?
I think the key is to remember that negotiation is a skill, right? It's an art that you can learn and refine with practice. It's not about being, like, born with this magical talent for persuasion.
So I don't have to be like a smooth talker.
No. It's about understanding human psychology, being observant, having the right tools in your toolbox.
And like you said, the more you do it,
the
more you practice these techniques, the better you get at it.
You become more attuned to those subtle dynamics
right.
of human interaction.
I think a lot of people, when they hear negotiation, they get intimidated, you know?
They do. It seems like this really formal, high-pressure thing.
Right. It's like suits and, you know, boardrooms.
Yeah, but Voss really makes it feel more accessible, right?
Totally. It's like, we're always negotiating, whether we realize it or not.
Right.
Like asking for a raise or even just figuring out dinner plans.
It's all negotiation.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you approach those conversations with that mindset, you actually become not just a better negotiator, but a better communicator, a better listener, more influential.
This has been awesome.
I'm glad.
Really, I'm feeling inspired, you know, to actually, like, use these techniques.
Yeah, I encourage you to start small, pick one, and experiment.
Yeah.
See what happens.
That's a great challenge for our listeners.
Yes.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Right.
You know?
The more we practice,
the
better we get.
All right. To all our listeners out there, happy negotiating.
Happy negotiating.
And remember, the power of no is just the beginning.
That's right.